The Company Rule in India, 1773 to 1858. Key events and their impact. Introduction to Company Rule. The Company Rule in India spans from 1773 to 1858, starting with the Regulating Act of 1773. This duration noticed large adjustments in the management and governance of India under the East India Company. Regulating Act of 1773. The Regulating Act of 1773 was a vital step by means of the British government to oversee and control the East India Company. It became the primary time the company's political and administrative roles had been officially identified. Key features of the Regulating Act. Governor-General of Bengal. The Governor of Bengal have become the Governor-General of Bengal, with an executive council of 4 participants. Lord Warren Hastings was the primary Governor-General. Subordination of presidencies. The governors of Bombay and Madras had been made subordinate to the Governor-General of Bengal. Supreme Court establishment. A Supreme Court became installation in Calcutta in 1774 with a Prime Justice and 3 different judges. Prohibition of private trade. Company servants had been prohibited from conducting private trade or accepting bribes. Increased British control. The British authorities increased its control over the company via requiring the Court of Directors to file on its revenue, civil, and military affairs. Amending Act of 1781. Settlement Act. Amending Act of 1781 was passed to correct defects of the Regulating Act of 1773 and was intended to clarify the powers and authority of the General Court and the officers of the company. Highlights of the Amendment Act. Exemption from the Supreme Court. The Governor-General and his council are excluded from the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court to engage in government. Income matters excluded. Income matters are excluded from the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. Application of personal law. The Supreme Court had to follow the laws of the defendants themselves, Hindu law for Hindus and Mohammedan law for Muslims. Appellate action. Appeals from provincial courts were referred to the Governor-General, not the Supreme Court. Rules for district courts. The Governor-General of the Council was empowered to make rules for district courts and councils. Pitt's India Act of 1784. Pitt's India Act of 1784 was intended to address the dual functions of the East India Company, separating its commercial and political activities. This act established a dual government system. Highlights of Pitt's India Act. Separation of functions. The Court of Commerce was in charge and another body called the Board of Control was in charge of politics. Executive Committee. The Executive Committee had the authority to supervise and direct all activities of the civil and military authorities or revenues in British possessions in India. British government control. The British government became given ideal control over the company's management in India. Charter Act of 1813. The Charter Act of 1813 renewed the company's charter but ended its monopoly on change, besides for tea in exchange with China. It allowed missionaries to come back to India to promote training and non-secular sports. Key features of the Charter Act of 1813. End of trade monopoly. The company's exchange monopoly changed into ended, besides for tea and change with China. Missionaries allowed. Missionaries were allowed to promote education and spiritual sports. Financial allocation. A monetary allocation turned into made for the promotion of education. Charter Act of 1833. The Charter Act of 1833 aimed to centralize administration and create a uniform machine of governance. It made the Governor-General of Bengal the Governor-General of India. Key features of the Charter Act of 1833. Centralization of power. The Governor-General of Bengal have become the Governor-General of India. End of commercial activities. The company's industrial sports were completely stopped, making it an administrative frame. Law Commission. A law commission changed into mounted to codify Indian laws. Charter Act of 1853. The 1853 Charter was the last company charter and focused on business reform. It introduced an open competitive system for civil servants. Open competition was introduced for civil service, making it easier for Indians. Legislature. Legislative functions were distinct from executive functions of the Governor's Council. New Charter. New Articles of Association were drafted without a fixed term, providing for an indefinite reign. Conclusions. The Companies Act laid the foundation for the modern governance and legal system in India. Understanding these historical events helps us appreciate the evolution of governance in India. Thank you for your attention.